Today, we're going to be talking about the Fenix HM65R-T headlamp. Let's get into it. So before we jump into this video, I just want to make a quick note about gear reviews. I don't do a ton of them, and there's a couple of different reasons for them. Number one, I like to review a product for a number of weeks, if not months, before I have an opinion on it, especially publicly facing. And number two, to me, these videos can turn into very quickly sponsored BS. And I get approached by companies to review gear all the time, and I turn them down pretty much every single time. But I also know that people buy gear, and my opinion on them, especially using after tens, if not hundreds of hours, could be valuable to somebody else. So that's why we're going to get a little more into these in 2023 and beyond. The reason I chose the Fenix headlamp here is because the headlamp is relevant for trail runners, it's relevant for hikers, it's relevant for anyone walking the dog even. And I thought that this would be a good product to start with for 2023. This video is not sponsored by Fenix, it's not sponsored by anyone. These are all my own thoughts, and everything I talk about when we talk about this headlamp here is firsthand experience and my own experience using it throughout different scenarios. Let's jump into it. So in terms of specs, the Fenix HM65R-T is a $104.95 US retail. It rates at 1500 lumens. The weight of it, I just weighed it on my scale, is 4.9 ounces with the battery included. Without the battery, it lists at 3.2, but I don't know why that's relevant. You would always want a battery in this thing. In terms of the durability, it's very durable. It's waterproof up to 6 meters, I believe. And the light settings, there are two. You can kind of see the left and the right lights here. You can control them separately. So they have a ranking of from 24 to 300 hours on the lowest setting, and then 4 to 12 hours on the highest. If you were to use both of them at the same time, it's really gonna depend on how you use that, but just in ballpark settings, like that's what you can expect out of this. Let's talk about my experience using the Fenix HM65R-T. So this was my only headlamp I used during the Leadville 100 run. I've used it in cold scenarios, just trail running around here in training. I've used it for bigger days like the rim to rim to rim. I've used it for summer hikes like Mount Whitney. It's been my go-to headlamp really for most of 2022. I always like to start with positives, so let's start with some pros of this headlamp. I think right off the bat, this thing is really bright. I run a lot on roads where there's not a lot of visibility, or trails where it's just impossible to see. We're in the time of year here where daylight hours are very precious. So what I really love about this is it's bright. You can toggle around the two different headlamp types here. And really when I talk about headlamp types, we have the mode that kind of shoots out to the side here, and then the typical spotlight. So just the straightforward, smaller area of illumination versus the side, which lights a lot of terrain, but just not super far out. I tend to run with the side one. It's very nice, but if I'm in a situation where I need to be seen, I'll go ahead and light them both up. And to be honest, it's equivalent to, I think, a very small old school car headlamp. It's just extremely bright, which is awesome. Something I love about it is the battery indicator here, so you can quickly see what the charging status is before you hop out for a run. It charges fairly quickly. Typically it's fully charged in about 20 to 40 minutes, depending on, obviously the battery level, but it's not something that's going to take hours to charge. When we talk about the charging port here, it's just located in the back and uses a USB-C cord, I believe is the name of that. Very common for most devices nowadays. The nice part about this guy is the battery swap. So if I am going on a bigger expedition, so the Leadville 100 as an example, or something where I'm just going to be outside for a long amount of time, I can quickly unscrew the cap here. Maybe not so quickly in this video, it's very tight currently, and just pop the battery out. So this battery right here, it's a 3400 mAh battery. We'll talk about these in a second, but you can pick up extras of these, and they are super quick to just pop right back in, screw it, and then keep on with your activity. As you might have been able to tell just by looking at it, it does have a BOA system, so it's a very quick adjustment. Whether you want to pop that onto a hat, put it onto your head itself, it's just a really quick adjustment there to get it nice and snug and secure on your head. It's a very durable headlamp as well. I've dropped this a couple of times. There's a couple of little dents on this, but in general, I try to take pretty good care of headlamps because they are one of the most vital pieces of gear in your bag. I don't find that in other headlamps, I found that they heat up quite a bit. This does have a warning for hot on here, but really I've never had problems with it being too hot on my head or overheating or causing sweating or anything like that. And again, I've worn this during hotter summer months as well. Now that we've covered some of the things I really like about this headlamp, the Fenix HM65R-T. Boy, is that not easy to say. That would probably be my first con, would be the name of this thing. But in all seriousness, we're gonna get into some things that I don't really love about this headlamp. So first off is its performance in cold weather. And don't get me wrong, this thing is not like other headlamps where the second the battery gets cold and it dies. It does pretty well. I've run with this in temperatures down to about 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and it lasts the whole time, but it definitely does drain the battery a lot quicker. Speaking of battery, we talked earlier in the video about specs and the number of hours that this thing is rated to perform at. While it doesn't perform awfully, I wore this during the Leadville 100 run, and maybe all said and done, there was about 10 to 12 hours of darkness with that. I swapped out the battery once, and I was using this on the highest settings for pretty much the entire time. There were a couple times around crowds where I turned it down, but for the most part, I was really cranking out the performance of this thing. But in general, I don't think the ratings that they provide are accurate, but at the same time, like, it definitely still lasts a very long time for a headlamp. Talked earlier in the video about these batteries that the Fenix headlamp runs off of. And while you can buy replacements for them, they are not easy to find. So this isn't a battery where you can like roll into a Walmart or a grocery store or any kind of general pharmacy or something like that and find this battery. You do have to order these online. Fenix themselves sells them. They are pretty expensive. I want to say they're about 20 bucks. So you can also find them on Amazon. I will link this specific set in the description below. But if you do need to stock up on these quickly, it's not the easiest thing to find. So keep that in mind. If you're traveling somewhere and you want an extra one, I would definitely have it beforehand. The headlamp here at 5 ounces, pretty much with the battery in it, it's not the lightest on the market. Certainly there are lighter ones out there. So if you're purely looking to have the lightest piece of gear in your bag, this one probably doesn't check the box for you. Finally, while I do like the BOA system here, what I found, and this might be a personal preference for me, is that when I put it directly on my skin, although it can adjust no problem at all, and I don't have any problem with it moving around or anything like that, it's not the most comfortable, because what I find is that I end up tightening it just to be more secure and prevent some of that bounce that will really drive a lot of trail runners, especially crazy. And although I haven't had problems with the bouncing per se, that might be because I typically wear a hat when I'm wearing this as well. I don't love the feeling of this right on my skin. When I'm working out, my body tends to swell a bit, especially at altitude, and this tends not to be the most comfortable thing. Think of something like when you're wearing a hat and you're hiking at high altitude and you have a headache because it's just cutting circulation off. I've had a similar experience with that. So I like to wear this over a hat, which again, doesn't make it the best piece of gear because then you're wearing a hat, which can cause sweating and overheating and all that fun stuff. So just kind of keep that in mind. I definitely would recommend trying it on if you can. I've found it to be much better than the typical band adjustment system that headlamps have. So the BOA system is probably one of the better options out there. So there you have it. That's going to wrap up my review here of the Fenix HM65R-T headlamp. Again, this is made for hikers, Really, the T stands for trail. So I think when Fenix designed this headlamp, what they had in mind was a trail runner. And certainly I think if you're a trail runner, I would highly recommend this, or at least trying it out. Of course, headlamps don't care what activity you're doing, so I use this for walking the dog, for hiking, for running, on roads and on trails, all different activities. The other piece that I didn't mention is the band here is reflective, so just kind of another additional pro for it to help visibility wise. Overall, I would give this an 8.5 out of 10. Highly recommend it. If I needed another headlamp, I would definitely buy another Fenix, and I probably would buy this model as well. Fenix for me has just been, it's a Colorado company, so I like supporting some of the local businesses. Again, it's not a sponsored video, but their headlamps, in my experience from a brightness perspective, are pretty tough to beat. If you have this headlamp, let me know what you think of it in the comments below. I'll link the product in the description below to help support the channel. I'll get a little kickback if you decide to purchase it. But of course, I don't recommend this for you, just giving you my thoughts based on my use for this headlamp. If you'd like to see more gear reviews, let me know what you'd like me to review in the comments below. If you're new to my channel, I do virtual trail guides, hiking tips, gear reviews, all that fun stuff. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button not to miss any future hike related content. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys on the next adventure.